Hey everyone, welcome back to the Trendcrusher podcast. I'm your host, Peter K, aka Trendcrusher. This episode is all about grindcore again because my guests are Cloud Rat. The band's fourth full length album, Threshold, is out now via Artoffact Records. I got a chance to speak to guitarist Rorik Brooks about Threshold, which he describes as their best work so far, how he balances, making music with his day job and other responsibilities, and also how they recorded the album remotely, considering they're all across the country. So, all that and more in my chat with Rorik. Here it is. And I've got Rorik Brooks of Cloud Rat. Welcome to the Trendcrusher podcast.
Hey, how's it going? Glad to
Good,
be
man.
here.
I know this time difference is a little weird, but how's your day been so far?
Oh, it's been pretty good. It was kind of an interesting day because my youngest kid had to get an MRI this morning.
Ooh.
We were up real early. That was before school, so she got that done and then got her off to school. And I'm actually taking classes right now uh, in college as a non-traditional student. So got her to school, took my classes, got a bunch of junk done, had band practice with one of my other bands, and whew, now it's nighttime.
Wow,
Yeah.
that sounds like quite a day, and I think like we're definitely going to unpack some of it through our chat. But the reason we're talking is that you're a couple of weeks away from the Cloud Rat release threshold. How does it feel, honestly?
Uh, Honestly, it feels kind of surreal, and maybe at the same time, like I'm really excited for the record to get out there. I think it's our best stuff, and all of us are really thrilled about it. But at the same time, we've been having some struggles this summer. Uh, so it feels a little anticlimactic in ways because we haven't been able to get together. Because there's some gnarly personal family issues going on with one of our members, and I'm not really at liberty to discuss it, but it's pretty gnarly. So we haven't announced this officially yet, but our Europe tour is actually canceled, uh, coming up next month, which is it's after 2 years of COVID and having to cancel everything, and then
Yeah,
having to do it again, only for different reasons, is frustrating to say the least. Um, but that being said, we're still chugging along, and I'm excited. We've got a show in November, and we're planning more tours for next year. So we'll see what happens. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. That
Sorry
that
if that was
sounds
a
like
that was a rough answer for you.
no, that sounds like a lot's happening, right? I mean, because typically, if you look at it, bands are quite hyped, especially now after the last couple of years that we've had, right? With so many bands releasing music. And let's be honest, it's not like it's just there. Everyone's just released like their best material or stuff that they've really been working on for a while, right? And
Yeah.
which kind of brings me to because, I get a lot of music, right? And then sometimes I like reading the press notes, see what the bands are talking about it, or generally what the press is talking about it. And the press note that came with the advance copy of Threshold, you're saying this is our best work yet. You've got Madison saying that I feel this is our most intense record we've made, right? And now, typically, if you think about it, that's what most bands say because that's how you describe your newer
Yeah, I
album.
mean and
Yeah,
especially when
but
you're doing the press release too. Yeah,
yeah,
it's like
yeah. So let's leave the hype aside, right? Like, why do you honestly feel this is your best work yet?
I mean I have thought about that, and I think honestly it's probably because well, okay, there's a double edged sword. So I produced the album, recorded it myself, did all that stuff.
Oh,
And on one hand, I think it's our best because I was able to spend the time on it that I feel like we would like to spend on every other record.
hmm.
Like, but the studio costs end up being prohibitive. Uh, so we were able to take our time, get the best performances on each track, really think about the editing, really think about how we want it to sound. And on the other hand, though, then when you're mixing your own shit, it ends up, maybe it's could have sounded better if you went through somebody else, or had different
Yeah.
ears on it. But maybe it's a self, not selfish, but you know, I think it's just like the closest vision that we've been able to release that really encompasses what I think we sound like and what we all, collectively feel the best about. Uh, so
Okay.
that's probably why, it's kind of a more personal record in that way.
Okay, so I have to ask you then, when was the last time you actually heard Threshold, and when do you think it is safe for you to listen to Threshold again?
I listened to it today. Uh, be-
Whoa.
because so the we dropped that new single the other day, and I hadn't listened to it, in like throughout most of the summer, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna just make sure that this is still okay, and then I was like, okay, it's still pretty good. So, but I don't know. Maybe I'll come back to it in a couple of years and be like, oh, this sucks. Should have changed
Yeah,
that.
because yeah, let's be honest, right? Like I work in podcasting, and at some point you just listen to it and then you get just like so tired, and after a
Oh
period
yeah.
of time it all kind of sounds the same, right? Like you're just like, my ears, there's something wrong with my ears.
Yep. No, you're very right about that, and that's I think that's inevitable anyway. So yeah,
Okay. Now I have to kind of to, just to dive in a bit on Threshold, right? Because when I remember Pollinator came out a few years ago, everyone was talking about it, right? It got like, you're talking from like your mainstream press to blogs, and that must have been something because you guys have been around for a while. Like Cloud Rat's not a new band, right?
right.
But to get that kind of acclaim, did that kind of weigh on y'all while y'all were working on Threshold? Like, did that kind of say that, hey, you look, we have to top this album? Or you were like, you know what, fuck it, this is a new album, new perspective, new everything, we'll do what we want, right?
Probably a little bit of both. Honestly, though, I had that feeling a little more with Pollinator because I don't know
Hmm.
if I was just in a bubble or something, but I felt like when at the time that we put Kelly put out, that one seemed like it got a bunch of press and stuff and was like pretty hyped in that way. So maybe when we were doing all those splits and Pollinator and stuff, I was always feeling the weight of Kelly put. So when Pollinator came out, I didn't really. I mean, I knew we were getting press and stuff, but I didn't know, or maybe I just didn't pay attention that it was, getting that kind of acclaim. So that's cool. That's cool to know. Uh,
Yeah. No, and that's the
so
thing, right? I mean, you guys are so prolific in a way because that's what I love about, like, say, grindcore or hardcore punk and stuff like that, is that it's not just the albums, right? I mean, like I was showing you earlier, I got the discography which has like all the splits, and that's kind of cool to have, right? Otherwise,
yeah,
you're ending up buying like these 7-inch vinyls from all over the place.
yep,
But that's interesting because I remember Kelly Put also being there, but I think probably also just in terms of visibility, because you have far more outlets, far more blogs now covering metal, right? So that's why
yep,
Pollinator was far more on the radar for me. And I think like all kudos to your label and all of you, right? Because that's what I'm slowly seeing with Threshold also, right? You're seeing that push in there, people talking about it, even though we're 2 weeks away from the album release. Uh, I have to ask you then, because you talked at least about the recording and all of it being done by you. From what I understand, all three of you live like a couple of hours away from each other. And
yep.
I don't know how strict it was in your area the last couple of years, but that doesn't make life easier, right? I mean, it makes it much harder when you want to kind of like even rehearse, let alone record. So, how did you guys kind of navigate all of that?
It was pretty rough. I'd say it was terrible for the first year. We I think we didn't see each other in person, at least all three of us together, until almost a full year after lockdown started in March of
Wow.
2020. So I saw Madison like once that summer, and then I think I saw Brandon once in the fall, and then it wasn't until that next year that we all got together. And then during all that, though, so Brandon has a little recording set up at his house. So we did record a few things separately and then put them together. Like I mixed them so that like we were able to make it work, in that way. And then by the time we were actually going to record Threshold, I had already had most of the songs demoed in my home studio. And I was also doing a podcast for a little while during the
Oh yeah.
lockdowns and stuff. And some of the songs were like written during that, like on that was like live streaming and writing stupid songs or whatever. And was like, what do you think of this? So by the time that we actually recorded, it was mostly like people were kind of doing whatever, but we did have to stop in the middle of recording because a couple people got COVID, and then a month later, I ended up getting it, even though we were still masking and stuff. So I don't know. It was all a little just a little crazy, but we got through it.
Yeah, and I can imagine, right? Because like you had two ends of the spectrum for bands, right? Some of them who really took this lockdown on being indoors, set up home studios and stuff like that, and started recording and stuff. And then the others who were like, "Fuck Zoom, fuck this remote recording and stuff like that." Like we want to do it like the old school way, right? So you had
Yep, which I get
bands
it.
who were
I totally get it. Yeah.
yeah. So bands were divided in there, but that's why I'm glad at least you guys decided to kind of, especially I think considering you said you write most of the material, so uh, that's there.
The core riffs and whatnot. Yeah, but this one we did have. It was cool to have. It felt like we had more time either way. Like I wrote the core stuff and then had more input from everybody because there was more time to do it. And then yeah.
Okay, we'll jump into that in just 1 second. What I
Okay.
want to talk to you about is, since you talked about this being your most intense record, let's play one of the tracks which you think is definitely an example of that. So, which track would you like us to play?
Oh wow, you're putting me on the spot here. Uh, well, let's go with the last track on the record, Babahaz.
Okay,
The
and why
there's a
that?
Well, for one thing, there's a viola on the track, which I kind of wish we would have mixed it a little higher at one point, but we'll worry about that later. My oldest kid played viola on the record for that, but
Nice.
I think the end of that song sort of encapsulates how it's like a big statement on my end, musically speaking. It feels really intense and trying to write like a epic song, but in like a minute and a half or whatever, ripping off Discord and taxis.
Awesome. So, here's Babahaz. All right, that was Babahaz of the latest album from Cloud Rat Threshold, and I've got Rorik with me. Now, you talked about this entire process of writing and how time kind of you're used in the right way where you were actually spending more time. Was there a point actually where you realized that, what, this is where I need to leave the song? Because there's always going to be that element of you keep tweaking, keep adding something more, right? I mean, like that's what I was talking about. Like, even though the album's all set and everything, but you still will go back and revisit it, right?
Yeah, I mean that's always a curse of any kind of self done project, right? But I think we ended up stripping back actually a little bit. Like
Hmm.
it was started out with a lot more production junk done to it, but then I think towards the end of it we kind of pulled it back and made it a little more raw. And then I think there was a weird kind of plus side to people getting COVID in a way. Because like when I got it, then stuff got
Hmm.
pushed back even farther, and we are like, well, we got to get this fucking thing done now. So we did have
Hmm.
more time in the beginning, but then later it ended up being, of course, like a rushed. Oh, if we send this to the label now and with the artwork, we'll have the record out in time for October, which this was all the way back in like January or February.
Wow.
Yeah, because vinyl stuff's all backed up. Which we were planning this tour, you know, around that as well. So that is kind of how that happened, and so I ended up having to stop it right then, and having to be like, all right, these are the choices we're making. The record's done, we all listen to
Yeah.
it, and so yeah,
I mean, I love how at least you're kind of just like encapsulating or at least describing most creative pursuits, right? And anyone who's been in any kind of creative field, like you start off with like full energy that, okay, I'm going to conquer the world. I'm the shit. Halfway through, you're like, okay, fuck, I have no idea what I'm doing. And in the end, you're just like, okay, I have to meet this deadline. So let's just get this shit done. Like, let's just do it. Right. And it's sometimes you'd think that you'd learn from that, but it kind of goes through that same cycle every time, right? Until you take a step back. And I think
absolutely,
for a lot of people, that's what the lockdowns really did, right? It just made you realize that, hey, what am I really doing or what am I really focusing on? And I want to touch a little bit on the lyrical aspect, and maybe you can kind of give me some insight on it. Because from what I've read, the concept of or the theme of time is something that goes through the album, if I'm not mistaken, because that's something I read. Could you tell us more about that?
yeah. I wish I had the exact story that Madison was going for, but every record, at least each like full length, there's she ends up writing like basically a concept. So every album is technically a concept album from that perspective.
Hmm.
And this one was like, I want to say it was sort of autobiographical, but not totally. It was about a person who was, going insane, locked in their house. But I know that's like a little on the nose. It's way more
Hmm.
poetic than I could put it. But it basically describes, an emotional breakdown as each song like goes. I guess she had sequenced it in that way. So,
Okay.
um, and that relates to time because I think it's like the way the person is experiencing time in it.
Hmm.
So like
Hmm.
it kind of hops back and forth, while having the emotional breakdown, and it's pretty interesting. I do
Yeah.
wish I
Yeah.
could speak more specific to it, but like she writes pretty cryptic stuff, and like some songs I know what they're about, but it's like not necessarily something that she wants to put out there fully, like
No.
so
No.
it's
Fair
like.
enough.
But other ones I have no idea. I'll just read them and be like, "Wow, that like sounds really cool." I wish, you know. But I think her lyrics work in a really nice way to create pictures in your head. At least that's how I see them.
Yeah.
Like they're really like imagery heavy. So whether it's like telling a coherent thing or not, it's always still pretty interesting for me at least to read it.
Yeah. No. I think it's crazy, right? Because at least with grindcore, because I listen to a lot of it, right? There are two aspects. One part it's where it's straight on the nose, and then there's the other part where you're kind of deciphering. But at the same time, I feel, and especially as somebody who loves reading into lyrics, do you really want to know, right? Because I feel sometimes with the artist they leave it up to interpretation, and it you can kind of personalize it yourself. So I kind of get what you're saying with that. What I definitely want to do is now kind of play one more song from the album. And actually, since they're really short, do you want to play two songs from the album?
Yeah, I mean, hey, whatever you want to do.
Yeah, no, I mean that's the beauty, right? We can play two songs back to back, and some people may not even realize they're two songs.
Right? Yeah.
Okay, so which song should we play, or song? You tell us.
um. Oh gosh. Uh. Persicom,
Okay,
which
why
is
why why that one?
uh, uh the riff, the opening riff in that. uh, I know it sounds kind of simple when you're listening to it, but it's deceptively probably the one of the hardest parts to play on the record. Um, who am I kidding? All these songs are way harder than we. That was, I guess, a byproduct of having too much time to work on it, because like every song's really hard to play for the most part. So when we played some of these lives on these last couple tours, it was like, oops. But but yeah, I really like how this one turned out. It's got a kind of different, a little slightly more metallic vibe to it than we may have typically done in the past. But it's not like, so far out there that it's totally different. But yeah.
All right, so here's Perscom. All right, that was Perscom by Cloud Rat, and I've got Rorik here with me talking about the album. Uh, I have to be honest, right? I mean, just to come back to the earlier statement that we talked about it being intense, I really felt, and I want to kind of ask you, if do you feel like with this album, just like a lot of your other albums, encapsulate like a certain moment in time of sorts, or would this be something that maybe in 5 years now you look back and say, yeah, Threshold was this time of our lives in there? I wouldn't want to call it a pandemic record, because I believe at least like if the pandemic didn't happen, you would still make a record, right?
Yeah, I think you're right. And we did some pandemic songs, I would say, that were before
Hmm.
the record. Like I think Mother Tongue Glitter Belly uh,
Yeah.
was more in that mold and like faster. Like we did some of our more electronic kind of weirder stuff that feel more like really snapshots in time. Whereas this, I think, hopefully they stand out, a little on its own. But every record, if I go back and listen to it, it feels like that, right? It's its own
Yeah.
snapshot in time, like you said. And I think Brandon already. like in a different interview, I saw him say something about that, and I agreed. You know, I agree with what you said. I think you're right. It is a snapshot in time. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. And what I also want to talk about, right, is this entire side projects of stuff that you have with electronic music. Because what you've said is that, and I quote, is that little projects and even solo stuff from each member is in the works for 2022. So I don't want to know. I'm not sure if you can reveal much about the other members, but could you tell us like what stuff you're working on?
Yeah. Well, I don't have any specific timeline of stuff, but so first, right now, currently, Madison had sent me some acoustic tracks. That so she has a different project called Hungry Moths. That's all
Okay.
like lo-fi acoustic, sort of ambient, maybe a little noisy, but it's pretty stuff too. So she sent me those and was like, just fuck with these songs, do whatever you want. So I kind of wrote these weird electronic skeletons around them, and we've been planning to do some of that. And then Brandon has this whole other really interesting kind of glitchy, um, synthesizer, modular synth
Hmm.
stuff. He's like a total wizard with that shit. He doesn't just buy it and let it sit. He like learns it and actually uses it. So, um, but yeah, so he has like some other glitchy dance stuff that he was working on, and we have, I'd say, like 5 or 6 songs in that mold. But we haven't been able to really flesh it out yet. Because we did those tours earlier this year, and then this summer, everything, like, we just, Madison was gone for a while, and then we weren't able to get together at all this summer, and then this other stuff's going on. So, uh, hopefully in the next few months we'll be able to get together and start doing that stuff again. But um, one thing I didn't want to do was just repeat what we did with the Cliff stuff,
Hmm.
uh, or at least because some of the stuff I've been working on, I'm like, okay, this just sounds just like that stuff again, um, which is cool. But I feel like I'd rather really branch out and get real weird if we're gonna keep doing that kind of stuff. Yeah.
That's one of the things about side projects, right? Is that you can kind of really, I mean, first of all, you don't need to release it under your own name. You can use a pseudonym or something like that.
Right.
So, so no one really knows it's you. But at the same time, you can kind of do whatever because it's away from the main band. So, yeah, that's interesting. I mean, something to keep. Hopefully, release it under your name. Otherwise, it's going to be hard to tie back pseudonyms to you.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of why we decided to do that with the Cliff stuff. I mean, it was like it's all three of us. We're the same band. Obviously it's entirely different shit. So maybe this is weird, but I don't know. It felt like a statement to make. And like you said, I mean, I we haven't even decided if the stuff we're doing now is gonna be like technically under the Cloud Rat moniker.
Hmm.
Um, and that's just the collaborative stuff. Everybody's got multiple. Brandon has a billion fucking projects, and so does Madison. She's in a lot of bands too. Uh, I'm kind of the one who's in the less amount of bands, and I'm in like 4 right now. So I don't know. Oh, I was just gonna say none of them are super active. There's only one like that I've been practicing with really regularly, and we're planning to record in a couple weeks. So like that's actually happening. The other ones are like long distance, kind of very slow going.
So, which kind of brings me to this question, right? And I have to give a shout out to actually Rick Jackson of Moshpit Nation because he's the one who kind of nudged me to ask you this, and he knows you far better than me. He's the one
Yeah, Rick
actually who
rules.
gifted me. Yeah, he gave me the CD. So he wanted to know that how do you kind of manage juggling all of this, right? You've got family jobs, 4 projects. He said also that you sometimes drive around for bands that are touring.
Yep,
Wow,
I've
like
done that.
break it down for me. Or do you are you like really efficient with like an Excel sheet and Google
No.
Calendar and stuff like that, or you just wing it?
I really wish I was. In fact, I struggle with it pretty bad. I recently actually was diagnosed officially with ADHD, uh,
Oh,
which I I've suspected for a long time, but I finally
Hmm.
saw somebody about it, and I have fucking anxiety and depression, all the normal stuff that everybody has. But I so no, I'm pretty. I don't want to say poorly managed, but I struggle. So the answer to your question is I really don't know how all that
Hmm.
happens. Other than I have probably unhealthily driven myself a lot in the past, like really pushed, no sleep to the brink, kind
Yeah.
of really doing a lot. I used to own a record store and I ran a venue and I worked a construction job and I was a single dad and I was in two touring bands. Uh, that was back about 15 years ago, and that really did not end well. The record store closed and I almost offed myself, and that was a really hard time in my life. So I learned from that and took on a few less things, but then, as you take on a little project here and there, and then you end up, expanding them, then you end up in the same position again, doing too many things and trying to figure out, well,
Yeah.
how do I, So I actually, to answer also, right now in my life, right this very moment, I'm doing a lot of things like going to school and doing like work stuff, and actually just started running karaoke at our local bar too on Thursdays every now and again. But
Nice.
and my kid is in like dance and gymnastics and soccer, and my oldest kid's in college, so I'm helping them with that. But all of that being said, I'm doing a little less right now. Uh, I got off the internet. Like I'm really stepping back because I don't know, it feels bad for my mental health, and I'm actually taking more time for myself and my wife, like just to like be and appreciate things and enjoy our time, play a bunch of video games, because
Nice.
there was too much going on, and I think maybe one downside is I don't get to go out to as many shows as I would like. Uh, but I really I needed to step back a bit,
Okay.
and
Fair enough. So thanks a lot for sharing. I mean, I appreciate you being so open. So I have to ask you, just to kind of shift the mood a bit, since you're doing karaoke at the bar, right? What's one song you wish no one ever requested or came up and sang again? Like if you never heard it at karaoke ever again,
oh,
you'd be fine with
shit,
it.
man. Oh, there's a lot of them, but the other night somebody did that wagon wheel song. Do you know the
No.
song Wagon Wheel?
Should I be glad?
Wagon wheel. Oh, mama rock me. You ever heard that song?
No. Luckily,
All
no.
right, well, that's good. Drives me fucking bonkers. So yeah, somebody did that, and I actually I feel bad now, but because I'm just the karaoke host, right? So he's like, wagon wheel. And I looked at him and I was like, no. And then I felt real bad because I was like shaming him. I was like, okay, it's fine. It's fine. You do your song. And he had a great time doing it. And other people seemed to like it too. So I decided I should stop being a fucking jerk. But yeah, I hate that song. There's probably quite a few of them though. But you know what? Fuck it. It's sort of like a comedy, right? If you hear something a bunch of times, it's not funny anymore. But then you hear it a bunch more times, it becomes funny again. So maybe if a
Yeah.
song is really bad, I hear it enough, I hate it, and then I hear it even more, and then I'll like it. Wait, I got my answer. Maybe I don't know if it's controversial, but that band Five Finger Death Punch, I really don't like that band. So
Oh.
that
Wait,
how about that?
someone comes up and does that at karaoke?
No, I'm just saying if they did.
Oh man.
I see you're asking about karaoke. Yeah, no, we'll stick with Wagon Wheel. If somebody came up and tried to do Five Finger Death Punch when I'm running karaoke, I'm giving them the hard no.
I don't think that'll end well, right?
Right. Well, somebody did that band It Prevails. I think that's what they're called.
No way.
And he had it like totally rehearsed, like perfect, like the deathcore vocals, and then like perfect
Wow.
singing. Like it sounded like he had like listened to the album 5 million times and sang it along, and which I guess that's karaoke, right? But it was just kind of weird to watch because to me, that's not karaoke. You just got to be a goofball and have a good time. But
Yeah, yeah, and let off steam, right?
yeah, yeah. Which, hey, if that's what he's into, go for it.
Oh boy. So, just to come back uh, to Cloud Rat instead of talking about other bands.
Oh, it's
Uh,
fine. We don't got to talk about Cloud Red. We're
I
just
have
hanging
to.
out now.
I mean, you've got a new album coming out, Threshold. I saw that you did a collaboration with the Cognition Brewery Company on a beer. You guys performed at Roadburn this year. I mean, what's next? I mean, there's so much, honestly, that you guys can do. But I mean, to circle back to your first response to my question, right? Like, I know there's
Yeah. Well,
no European tour happening, but yeah.
yeah. That's a huge bummer, and I'm sure if somebody's hearing that for the first time right now, I'm really sorry. If you had tickets or something, it's like really upsetting. Right now, so we had planned to do that tour and then take a couple months off for the holidays and then hit it hard again in the states, but and like try to do even like more international touring too. We really want to hit like South America. We just played with Test the other day. You know that band?
Oh yeah, love them.
Yep, they're the best. One of the best bands in the world and some of the best people. And they keep saying, "Please, please, please come to Brazil." And we fucking rotten really bad. And like in 2020, we were supposed to do Japan with our buddy Adam, that band Disrotted that we did a split
Hmm.
with years ago. We were supposed to do that. So that's something I still would like to do. But right now, right this very moment, I can't. I don't know because the situation going on is like there's not really a resolution for it just yet. We don't see. Um, it's not interpersonal. We're fine as a band, as
Hmm.
friends. It's something we just going on with the family stuff. So I want to say we're probably going to tour a bit. Do what we can, and then there's probably going to be a little bit of a break, at least as far as like recording stuff goes, other than maybe that electronic thing we talked about.
Hmm.
Um, because we already have we got like 180 songs now and a lot of records. So I guess it's probably going to be take a little break. I'm going to be doing school. Hopefully, we do some more festivals and stuff and get to hit places that we've never been. Um, and I want to do more remasters. I know some people might not be fans of them, but like I have a full remaster remix done of our Fever Dreams stuff and of Moksha as well. I've got a full
Oh, nice.
remaster done of that. Um, which that was a
So,
really hard project, but yeah.
so since I was gonna wrap up, but since you've brought this up, what's it been like revisiting some of that material, right? And especially with reference to what I talked about, just like revisiting this certain period in time. Has it been easy, hard, or you've kind of just like, I don't know, is it like looking back at an ex girlfriend and saying, like, oh yeah, I remember that?
I guess a little bit all the above. Like the first record, especially that we did the remaster of, I really enjoyed getting to just change it a little bit to get to how I kind of want it to sound.
Hmm.
But at the same time, from a songwriting standpoint, I definitely am like, wow, I feel personally way better about where we're at now. But I guess you can't really deny I mean, Madison was 19 when we did that record. I was 22. So the
Wow.
the youthful just like
Angst.
the firecracker boom, is just a little harder to capture now. Not that, we go through different vibes in life, everybody, and you're trying to, like you said, capture the snapshot of the time rather than like I don't want to keep having to go back and try and do the same thing anyway. So yeah, it's been interesting, I think. Those were
Yeah.
some pretty tough times though, like during making those records. So it's been interesting to reflect on that, especially 'cause it was with our old drummer, and there's a lot of interesting feelings from back then. So
Yeah. And I think
yeah,
it's also great in terms of while you're talking about it from the music point of view, right? Like, if you look at it from a marketing or even just like a distribution point of view, a lot of people who are now listening to Threshold or heard Pollinator now go back and revisit some of the earlier stuff, right? So
Yep.
it's a great way for just expose that music to a newer audience, so to say.
Yeah. Yeah, I think
So
so. And I think a lot of it could use a remix, like, and just the way we recorded it at the time, like, was, I mean, our friend Kevin did awesome work, but it was like that time. And I feel like it took me a few years to really understand how I wanted us to sound live, especially with
hmm.
the one guitar thing. And now I run through, I figured out how to simultaneously have bass going and two guitars and stuff. So that's kind of why I was revisiting that stuff, because I think it really fills it out the way that I could hear it in my head rather than how it ended up sounding.
Awesome. So I guess there's a lot more stuff to look forward to, at least the remasters in there. And yeah,
Yeah,
definitely stay
and
in touch.
yeah, we don't plan on quitting or anything. Like I said, when I say there's a break in there, I mean it's inevitable, right? It's like a
Yeah.
I think with streaming stuff right now, there's always a push for artists and bands to be like next thing, next thing, next thing, next thing, and we've just been talking between ourselves like maybe we've done a lot and maybe we should pace it out a little bit because we're going into their 40s and 50s and shit. What are we gonna keep putting out two records a year? Or which some people, I mean, look at thou they put out a fucking million records in a year. So,
Yeah. I mean,
uh,
I don't know. Have you heard King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard? Is that what it is? They put
yeah,
out
a
like
little bit. I mean,
yeah. They put out like 4 or 5 albums. I don't know. It's like I think they just record their jams and release it.
right. Yeah, I mean, if I had that kind of drive and confidence with my stuff, I guess I'd do it. But especially this kind of music, it's like it needs some space. If you're gonna do blast beats over and over, it's pretty hard to just like
Yeah.
make something fresh and new sounding when it's just like I already struggle with that when I'm writing a song. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna put a blast beat in here, and then it's like, well, we've already done 150 other songs with blast beats in them, so you got to figure out a way to make it fresh.
True. True. But thanks so much, Rorik. I mean, I really appreciated this chat. I think we're definitely going to do another chat, but maybe like about different aspects of music, because I really want to dive in more on the creativity aspect with you, and especially about grindcore, man. Because I love, like, I'm a nerd when it comes to stuff like that. So definitely
Yeah,
gonna hit you up later on.
yeah. Thank you for talking with me. I appreciate it and having me on.
And that was Rorik Brooks of Cloudrat. I really enjoyed my chat with him and getting to know Threshold far more. Definitely going to listen to that album with a completely different lens. And if you're listening so far, why don't you go check out Threshold? I'll leave links in the show notes on how you can get a hold of the album via Artoffact Records. As always, you know what time of the episode it is. If you're listening so far and you really enjoyed my chat, why don't you hit subscribe on the platform that you're listening to or give me a rating? As always, I'm going to be putting out weekly episodes, so follow me on social media. I'm Trendcrusher on most platforms, and stay tuned for a new episode next week. See you then. Cheers.